Now in today's video, we're going to be looking at my top transfer targets ahead of game week 12. We're also going to be looking at teams and players you need to be looking to target and of course avoid ahead of this game week. Now let's go and dive into my transfer targets. Now before we dive into today's video, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as we are trying to hit 15,000 subscribers by the end of the season, and it is only possible with your guys' amazing support. So if you do enjoy any of that content, make sure you're hitting the like button and of course that subscribe button being the main one. First off, let's take a look at game week 12. Sometimes I think we can get lost kind of getting, looking further forward, looking past and looking towards how many game weeks or how many green fixtures certain teams have. Sometimes you get lost and don't look at individual game weeks, and that's what I always like to do at the start of these transfer targets video. So we are using Fantasy Football's Hub's fixture kind of model. It looks at projected goals and of course clean sheet data. We will be taking a look at the betting data when that is available from Rob T FPL a little bit later on in the week, so make sure you are keeping your eyes peeled for that one, because it will be in my team selection and streams later next week as we do build closer to game week 12. But let's take a look at the Fantasy Football Hub model and see which fixtures it is suggesting that we should be obviously looking towards. Manchester United versus Ipswich, looking good for a clean sheet. I think the projected goals probably will be a little bit more higher when the betting markets do come out as well. New manager bounce, and of course Ipswich being one of the worst defences in the league so far this season for XG conceded. Liverpool against Southampton as well, definitely going to be looking at some captaincy potential there with some decent projected goals. 78% chance of a clean sheet. I'm a little bit hesitant on that one. We'll look at the 11-5 models in a few minutes, but they definitely have it lower. Looks like there could be plenty of goals in the game between Spurs and Manchester City. Notoriously a game that does have quite a few goals as well. And I think with both teams' leaky defences so far this season, could be a very, very interesting one, that one. And then of course the early kickoff as well. Leicester against Chelsea, obviously fancied for a clean sheet projection. And this is the start of a really, really good run coming up for Chelsea as well in terms of overall fixtures, all the way up until around game week 29. I've taken a look at this, so definitely Cole Palmer, Jackson, and of course maybe a defender like a Levi Colwill, a Reece James are probably going to be on our transfer radars, and they are some of the players that will be coming up in today's video. Let's go ahead and let's take a look to the next few game weeks using the 11-5 model. Again, if you want to go and check this out, link in the description. This is currently free on their website. So looking at projected clean sheets over the next few weeks, there's kind of, I would say, always the three towards the top, the three best teams within the league: Arsenal, City and Liverpool. So maybe if you've still got some Arsenal assets, the Reyes, the Gabriels, or maybe you're on a wild card this week as well, definitely worth considering some Arsenal boys for me personally. There's some great fixtures coming up. The 11-5 data as well is fancying them to be the best team over the next few weeks as well in terms of clean sheets. Close to 3 clean sheets over the next 6 game weeks, so nearly half of the games they are expected to keep clean sheet. It's by a country mile as well from second and third as well, so some really good percentage chance there. So like I said, if you've got Raya or maybe Gabriel, you've been a little bit disappointed the fact that they haven't kept as many clean sheets as last season, maybe just worth holding on for a couple more game weeks. There's some really high percentage chance of clean sheets here, so maybe just give them a couple more game weeks as well. Definitely players I would be targeting on a wild card as well. Liverpool and Cities, they're a little bit more hit and miss, I would say, so probably worth avoiding. I spoke about Chelsea in the last section potentially being a team you want to look at. 11-5 has them as the 4th best team for clean sheets over the next few weeks, so definitely worth some consideration with their defensive assets. Levi Colwill for me being the standout at 4.5 million if he obviously loses the flag before game week 12 does start off there. Obviously Newcastle as well, so Lewis Hall, quite a popular pick within quite a few drafts, should I say, for wildcards. I don't even know what I was going on about there, for the next few weeks, and at 4.4 million could be a real decent steal. Then we kind of have our mid kind of priced players again, where we're probably going to be looking for our cheap defenders from Brighton, Aston Villa and Bournemouth. Again, all of these teams have pretty decent runs coming up over the next few weeks and also have pretty decent projected clean sheet odds as well. So Kirkes, Konza, Lewis Dunk if he's fit and available, or it could be somebody like Veltman or Van Heck. that you potentially could be on your radar going further for the next few weeks. In terms of those projected goals from 11ify as well, it's kind of the three standout teams. Again, like I said, the three best teams for me in the league are always going to be kind of close to the top of this model, regardless of the fixtures that they've got coming up. So maybe could be worth potentially reconsidering selling Erling Haaland if you are on a wild card. I still think if I was on a wild card this week, I would be looking to get rid of the big Norwegian fraud. But the projected goals are still looking pretty decent. City are currently sat top for XG created. KDB's back as well, and I don't think Pep Guardiola is going to want this run to continue. So I do think there will be an uplift in terms of those performances. Arsenal as well, some pretty strong numbers across the board. So if Saka's injury does magically disappear before the game week 12 deadline, again, going to be another a player we're going to be looking at. Mohamed Salah's looking like a great captaincy option in match day 12 with some really good projected data across that period. Chelsea and Newcastle as well over the next 6 game weeks, some really good strong data. So obviously Nicholas Jackson and Alexander Isak definitely going to be on a lot of people's radars. We're going to talk about both of those players in a few minutes as well, discussing which one I actually prefer, and if I was to select one on my wildcard or in terms of transfers this week, which one I would be going for as well. There's also some other interesting teams, Aston Villa, Brighton and Bournemouth. Both of these teams featuring again within this section. They've got João Pedro, Evan Nielsen. All could be really decent pickups over the next few weeks. Again, maybe if you're on a wild card or maybe if you're in the market for a cheap striker. I think one other thing that I want to point out is obviously get 18th and 19th. It is Nottingham Forest and it is Everton. So maybe if you do have somebody like a Chris Wood or a Dominic Calvert-Lewin, it probably is looking wise to potentially shift away from these players with more difficult fixtures on the horizon and of course less projected goals across this period. So maybe worth potentially considering selling up Chris Wood this game week, and of course Dominic Calvert-Lewin, because that man is a fraud. Let's move on. Let's take a look at our first player, one of the most transferred in players this game week. It is going to be Bruno Fernandes, and I think for me personally, if I already owned him, I'd keep him for the next 2. Definitely if I was on a wild card, I'd maybe take a little bit of a gamble just for those next 2 fixtures because how delicious they are in terms of those projected goal numbers we saw from 11ify, and just I imagine when the betting markets do come out as well, it's going to be quite favourable for Manchester United. However, post that, City and Arsenal away, not great fixtures. Both of these teams we know historically have pretty decent defensive records as well. They're currently, within the top 5 sides as well for XG conceded, so you wouldn't expect Manchester United to get out of that one. And then the Forest at home fixture. Forest are currently sat second for XG conceded, so I don't think that's going to be any walk in the park. Now, Bruno Fernandes has had a massive upturn in terms of performances and in terms of his actual output over the past few weeks. So like I said, if I owned him, I'd keep him. If I was on a wild card, I would potentially maybe take a little bit of a gamble and then look to obviously replace him in game week 14. But if I was looking for a transfer this week, I don't think he would be one of the names that I would be looking to bring in. Yes, the next 2 fixtures are delicious. However, post that, you've really got a problem on your hands and somebody that you are going to have to obviously get out of this team. I do think, United will still probably pick up a few goals across that period, but they are playing some of the best teams in the league away from home and then playing Forest at home as well, who have such a good, solid, consistent defensive record that I don't think for me personally, I would be looking to invest in Bruno Fernandes. Obviously, he was very disappointing towards the start of the season, was just an XG merchant, but now he's actually started converting some of these chances, and that's great for the people that obviously took that gamble or have still stuck with him throughout this period. Fair play to you, massive respect. But for me personally, I'm not going to be looking at Bruno Fernandes. I think the next 2 are great, however longer term, probably not going to be a player I want to own, and with his more difficult price point, again, probably not going to be one of those players that I'm absolutely dying to go and get into my side this game week. Let's move on. Let's take a look at Alexander Isak and Nicholas Jackson. We obviously highlighted within the 11ify models that both Newcastle and Chelsea's fixtures are looking pretty decent for projected goals over the next few weeks, and I would argue that Nicholas Jackson has the better next 3. However, I'd say over the next 7, I probably would be leaning more towards Alexander Isak, with 2 newly promoted sides in 16 and 18 that are obviously swaying that as well. I think as well, Isak's the more informed player right now. As we can see here, 4 appearances in the last 5 game weeks, 4 attacking returns as well. He's having more shots on target, more in the box, better chances created, better XG, better expected assists, big chances created, more key passes. Everything is pointing towards Alexander Isak as the better option for me. Now, obviously, you have to navigate the game week 14 fixture where Jackson has Southampton, and of course, Isak has Liverpool at home. It's going to be a difficult one. Obviously, with Liverpool being the best defensive side in the league, not only for goals conceded and clean sheets, but of course, XG conceded as well. So that's going to be a little bit of a write-off for me personally, that fixture. However, over the course of the next 6 to 7 game weeks, I do feel like Alexander Isak will score. And one of the big things that is putting me off going for Nicholas Jackson, of course, is going to be the fact that we've got such heavy fixture congestion coming up. He's also 1 yellow card away from suspension as well. So do bear that in mind if you were to select Nicholas Jackson. And as well, they do have a lot of players that can play within that number 9 role. And Cuckoo, I think João Felix can also play there as well. I think that's something that Maresca has said. So for me personally, there's going to be a lot of games coming up in December. That's Europa Conference League, Carabao Cup. Of course, then we've got midweek Premier League rounds as well. There's lots of games slammed in here. And I do think Jackson potentially could be a victim of rotation. Could also see suspension, like I said, with that yellow card as well. And it's not really worth it when you are paying the big bucks for a player like this. So for me personally, if I had to select the 2 right now, maybe I was on a wild card or looking in terms of transfers, for me personally, I would be selecting Alexander Isak. It seems like he's back in the groove, back amongst the goals, some decent fixtures coming up for Newcastle, and like we saw with the 11-5 data as well, also decent projected goals. And I do think as well, he's got that less risk of rotation over this busy festive period for me, so that is why I would be selecting Isak over Nicholas Jackson. But let me know in the comments section which way you are potentially swinging on that one. Let's move on. Let's take a look at some cheap defenders. I know a lot of people are going to be on wildcard and looking for which cheap defenders to select for their sides. Obviously, people are also going to be looking for transfers over the next few weeks. Which cheap defenders should I be picking up? So I put together a list of popular picks and some of my favorite picks. So let's talk through some of them. Obviously, Aina is going to be quite a popular pick with how well he's been scoring over the past few weeks, but don't be fooled. Obviously, that 1 attacking return was a wonder goal from him. I know we spoke about how great Forest have been defensively, 2nd in the league for XG conceded. By the way, the charts pretty much is very, very simple to break down. Goal involvement, expected goal involvement per 90, and then the team XG conceded. So if they're higher up in that list, 2nd, 1st, it means they're a better defence so far this season. Obviously, if they're towards the bottom, 20th, it means they're one of the worst defences in the Premier League. So Forest are great. They really, really are in terms of XG conceded. However, their fixtures over the next couple are abysmal. We saw it with the 11-5 models as well. They're absolutely toward the bottom with the relegation kind of side. So it's going to be an extremely difficult period. So I think if you had Aina and you can rotate him for 12, play him for 13, then after that point, I would be looking to sell him. If I was looking to bring him in, I would actually recommend not bringing him in because the fixtures aren't great, and I will expect Forest to slide a little bit in terms of their XG conceded, as a side as a whole, with some more difficult fixtures on the horizon. Robinson, again, there's some difficult fixtures in 13, 15, 16 and 18. However, post that, if you can rotate around him and maybe he fits in nicely with some of the other boys, could be a decent shrewd pickup as well at 4.7 million. In terms of the expected goal involvement, there's not really too much to write home about. However, Fulham as a side, they've faced some pretty good sides and they're coming away with 4th in terms of XG conceded over the past, the start of this season. So they've really improved their defensive side and their defensive numbers as well. So Robinson could be a potential smart investment on a wild card. Obviously, like I said, if you can rotate around his difficult fixtures in 13, 15, 16 and 18, and obviously play him for the decent green fixtures as well. Mazraoui is going to be a player I'm going to recommend avoiding. The next 2 fixtures are great. However, United's defence hasn't really improved much from last season. They're currently sat 13th for XG conceded. They've also got a new manager coming in, and whether or not that means Mazraoui is going to continue to play, we're going to have to wait and see. There's reports as well that Shaw and Malacia are back in training, and with a new manager, I just don't think it's worth the gamble going for Mazraoui. He could be dropped. The fixtures aren't great, and Manchester United as a whole haven't been pretty decent in terms of XG conceded as well. So not going to be a player I'm going to be recommending. Aït-Nouri, I absolutely love, just purely down to the fact the positions this guy gets into. He's currently got the best expected goal involvement per 90, the second best, should I say, expected goal involvement per 90 on this list. Now, I would like Wolves to be a little bit more of a better defensive unit, as we can see, 17th for XG conceded. However, I do think with some decent fixtures all the way up until game week 18, we will see them start to, I would say, probably put themselves into that mid-table bracket. However, Aït-Nouri is one of those players that doesn't just get the clean sheets, he also picks up a lot of attacking returns, plays massively out of position. Obviously, the big concern is the fact that he is on 4 yellow cards, should I say, sorry. So do just be a little bit cautious of that one, obviously, if you need to play him week in, week out. Veltman's in here because he's currently the highest scoring Brighton player and has actually seen really, really decent minutes, which was surprising. He wasn't a player I was expecting to see so highly up. Obviously, my personal preference would be Lewis Dunk. I feel you get that, obviously, attacking threat from set pieces. He's the captain, he's the leader, he's probably going to play the most minutes out of all Brighton defenders, but I had to pick one of them because he's currently injured, and I wouldn't probably say I would go with Veltman. They've got a lot of defensive cover, a lot of players that can play within that area, lots of games coming up as well for them over this busy festive period. So for me personally, I'm not going to recommend picking up Veltman. If Dunk is available, he could be a really decent pickup, but obviously he's currently flagged and could miss out on game week 12, so not really going to be a player we were looking to have on our wildcards, unfortunately. Same goes with Leif Davis. There's some decent fixtures coming up for Ipswich over the next 5 to 6. However, I just can't get over the team sat in 20. If I can't be owning a defender from the worst defence in the league, and it's not even close at the moment, they're currently, I think, by like 0.2 goals, something ridiculous. So, you know, they're really, really struggling, Ipswich, in terms of their defensive numbers. Now, in terms of his creativity, it is absolutely amazing, but kind of predicting when those attacking returns is going to be extremely difficult and not always going to be in the positive green fixtures. And I would rather have my defenders at least have some chance of a clean sheet, and then obviously on top of that, attacking threat. That's not really the case with Leif Davis, so for me personally, probably going to be an avoid and not really going to be getting your bread and butter of clean sheets. That's for me is where defenders pick up their most points, is clean sheets. Then it's those just juicy attacking returns along the way that help them just keep pushing and keep ticking. That's why Aina's one of the top players within this price bracket, because he's done so well with Forest defensively, just getting the clean sheets is bread and butter, and then he's gone and put in a 15-pointer 1 week because he's got an attacking return. That's what we want from these cheap defenders for me personally, not the other way around, hoping for attacking returns and not really getting our clean sheets, like I said, our bread and butter. Let's move on. Let's take a look at Hall, Kirkes, Colwell and Konza. Now, for me personally, these are some of my favourite defenders I would be looking to pick up if I was on a wild card. We saw with the 11FI data, all these teams are projected to do quite well over the next few weeks as well. Newcastle have some decent fixtures coming up. Since game week 6 as well, Lewis Hall's minutes have been very, very secure, playing full 90s in pretty much every single one. I think maybe bar one where he played like 88. His expected goal involvement per 90 is the best out of these 4 players on this list, and Newcastle currently sat 8th for XG conceded as well, so not too bad in terms of that regard. Kirkes as well also falls within that bracket. He's seen decent minutes over the next few. Zabania as well also could be a decent pickup within that price bracket at 4.4 million. The only concern I do have with Bournemouth is there is a lot of rotation currently happening within that side, and trying to predict when that's going to happen is going to be extremely difficult over this busy festive period. They've got good team data and good XG conceded for a Bournemouth side and for the value that you're playing. I definitely think they could be a decent side, but trying to predict where that rotation is going to come over the festive period could cause you quite a few headaches. Colwell, for me, if he's fit and available, is going to be a player I'm going to absolutely look to get into my side, because for 4.5 million, you're getting a player that you can realistically keep all the way up until game week 29. That's when Chelsea's fixtures start to get real tough. Aside of that, they just have like the odd one that is just thrown in there, like just a City or an Arsenal. then it's just back to greens and greys. Like, that is the dream for a 4.5. Now, Chelsea's defensive numbers haven't been exceptional. They're currently sat 9th for XG conceded. I'd like to see them a little bit more higher up. However, we saw with the 11FI data that Chelsea are projected to do quite well over the next few weeks, as we can see playing against two newly promoted sides in 12 and 14 as well. So if Colwill is fit and available, he's probably going to be one of my #1 picks if I was on a wild card this week in terms of those cheap defenders. Ezri Konsa as well, also a very, very good pick. We all know about Ezri Konsa at 4.4 million. Aston Villa, 6 for XG conceded, so the good defensive record tick. He's usually one of the first names on the team sheet as well. Can play right back or centre back as well, so adds that extra versatility. I wouldn't be expecting too much in terms of attacking threat from him, but overall could be a really, really decent pickup. If I had to rank them in terms of order, I would be probably looking to go and pick them up. Aït-Nouri #1, Colwell's probably going to be 2, Hall 3, Konsa 4, and then after that we're starting to get into kind of the mid-ish categories for me personally. Let's finish up today's video. Let's take a look at predicted points over the next 5 game weeks. I'm actually surprised to see Erling Haaland top of this list. I thought with Manchester City's recent form, obviously his slump in form as well, I was expecting maybe like a Salah or a Palmer with some good fixtures for those guys coming up to maybe have outweighed him over there. But it's very, very interesting. So maybe again, food for thought if you are potentially thinking about selling off Erling Haaland. We spoke about Alexander Isak. He's obviously the second highest striker on this list as well, with decent projected points coming up. I think Chris Woods are slightly elevated, and I don't expect him to get those over that period. We saw with the 11FI model, it is predicting less and less goals for Forest over this difficult run as well. So for me personally, I'm not 100% buying into that one. Watkins could be a decent differential. Villa's fixtures are looking really, really tasty, and he's actually not been that bad this season. I think the fact that a lot of people are put off by him makes sense because of his extremely elevated price point this season at 9 million, and the fact that they've just got John Duran sat on the bench ready to go anytime they need him. João Pedro is probably going to be a very, very popular enabler at 5.4 million, and that makes complete sense because of his penalty appeal. My concern is, of course, minutes. Again, Brighton have a lot of quality within that position. Ruter has been doing exceptionally well within the 10 role while João Pedro is out, so maybe one to potentially consider going forward, and maybe one that could be a little bit dicey for me personally, and maybe I'd like to see a few more consistent minutes from João Pedro first before I obviously look to invest. Kai Havertz as well. Arsenal's fixtures pick up around game week 14-15, so obviously if Isak or Nicholas Jackson doesn't quite work out, you could of course make that switch for Arsenal's decent fixtures to Kai Havertz. That could also be a potential avenue for points there. That of course was the predicted points and my transfer targets video for today. Of course, if you did enjoy it, make sure you're liking, commenting, and subscribing. As like I said, we are trying to hit 15,000 by the end of the season. But if you did enjoy today's video, like I said, just hit that like button, get your comments in, all that good stuff, and good luck in game week 12.